Have you ever thought that once you finally get everything you've dreamed of, your life will stay peaceful forever? Ryan believed that. 3 years ago, he bought his dream home in Maplewood Heights, a quiet neighborhood where kids rode bikes under tree-lined streets and neighbors exchanged small smiles each morning. But the crown jewel of that house wasn't the spacious living room or the lush backyard. It was the calm, pristine lake that sat entirely within his property. To Ryan, that lake was more than just part of his land. It was his sanctuary. Every morning, he would step out onto his back porch, coffee still steaming in his hand, and watch the mist hover over the water as the first light of dawn slowly painted ripples across the surface. He loved those moments so much he never posted them on social media, never invited friends over for fishing, never hosted loud parties by the water. That lake was his place to breathe, to let the stress of work dissolve into the soft sounds of ducks gliding by, to watch his dog Max run along the edge, barking joyfully at dragonflies. Ryan wasn't the type to seek drama. He didn't care for gossip or conflict. He paid his HOA fees on time, trimmed his lawn, nodded politely at neighbors before returning to his quiet corner by the water. He believed that if he didn't cause trouble, trouble would never find him. But trouble does always come looking like trouble. Sometimes, it comes dressed in a polite smile, wrapped in the illusion of community spirit. In Maplewood Heights, trouble had a name. Karen. Karen was everywhere. She ran the neighborhood book club, organized community picnics, and was always the loudest voice at HOA meetings, talking about shared values and caring for one another. She knew how to smile while making you feel like you owed her something, how to phrase emails so they felt friendly while they dripped with subtle demands. But Ryan remembered the way Karen's eyes looked when she smiled at him once during a neighborhood meeting, sharp and calculating, like a cat waiting to pounce. Once, she had joked at a community BBQ, a beautiful lake like that shouldn't be wasted on just one person. Ryan had laughed it off, thinking it was just Karen being Karen. He didn't know that for Karen, it wasn't a joke. That morning, before the sun fully rose, Ryan stepped out with his coffee to begin his day with the ritual that kept him sane. He planned to sit in his usual wooden chair by the lake, listen to the birds, and remind himself why all the long hours and late nights working as a software engineer were worth it. But when he opened the door, the coffee cup slipped from his hand and shattered on the ground, brown liquid spreading like a dark stain across the patio. Because Karen was there. Standing on the shore of his lake, wearing a flowing white dress, holding a glass of wine, smiling as if she owned the world. With Brad, some guy Ryan had only seen around the neighborhood a few times, the type who drove a BMW and talked loudly into his phone, holding her by the waist. Along the fence line were white and pink ribbons fluttering in the breeze, tables and chairs set up along the lake, flower arrangements carefully placed, speakers quietly playing soft romantic music. And draped across his fence, in bold black lettering on a white banner, were the words Brad and Karen's wedding lake. Neighbors, at least 20 of them, were gathered, laughing, filming videos on their phones, chatting happily, taking photos as if this was the most normal thing in the world. On his lake. On his property. Ryan's brain couldn't process what he was seeing. His voice shook as he stepped closer, disbelief and anger fighting for space in his chest. Karen, what are you doing? This is my property, my lake. You can't just set up a party here. Karen turned, that sweet smile still on her lips, but her eyes were ice. Oh, Ryan, you're being selfish. This lake is a community treasure, and Brad and I are celebrating our engagement. You should feel proud that your lake is bringing so much joy to everyone. The laughter and chatter behind her felt like a wave crashing down on Ryan, mixing with the pounding in his ears as he looked at the banner, at the tables, at Brad smirking as he kissed Karen's cheek, as if he had just conquered something that didn't belong to him. Karen's words cut deeper than Ryan could admit. Because in that moment, Ryan realized that the peace he had worked so hard to build was being ripped apart, piece by piece, by the one person he thought was just another harmless neighbor. This was only the beginning. Karen didn't just want to use the lake for a morning celebration. She wanted it, and she wanted control. And Ryan was about to find out that the nightmare was just getting started, right on the land he had poured his entire life into. In the neighborhood he thought was safe. The question was no longer whether Ryan could protect his peace. It was whether he could protect everything. If you've never felt your entire world ripped away in a single morning, you can't truly understand the moment Ryan stood frozen, watching strangers laugh along the lake that used to be his only peace. He didn't scream, he didn't break things. He simply turned, walked back into his house, locked the door, and tried to steady his shaking breath. Outside, the laughter and clinking of glasses echoed, each sound like a blade twisting into his chest. Ryan told himself it was just a misunderstanding. Once the party was over, they would leave, and everything would return to normal. But nothing went back to normal. The next morning, Ryan stepped outside with a trash bag, planning to clean up the bottles and scraps they had left behind. But what he found was another nightmare. Signs. Dozens of signs hammered along the lake and the fence that marked his land. Community lake managed by HOA. Karen and Brad's wedding lake zone. Trespassers will be prosecuted. On his own land. Ryan ripped each sign down, shoving them into the trash can, plastic snapping under his grip as rage boiled to the surface. That's when he heard the familiar voice. Ryan, you're making a mistake. Karen stood on the other side of the fence, arms crossed, a fake smile playing on her lips. This lake doesn't belong to you anymore. Her voice was sweet as honey, but cold as steel. HOA president, I've decided this lake will serve the community. You've kept it to yourself long enough. Ryan's hands tightened on the trash can handle, eyes locked on Karen. You can't decide that. This is private property. It's in my deed. Karen tilted her head, eyes narrowing. We'll see. That night, Ryan received an email. From Karen HOA president. Short. Cold. Notice due to community needs, HOA will manage the lake effective immediately. Any interference will result in fines and prosecution. Ryan read it again and again, each word tearing into him. Then Karen posted a video. In the clip, she stood by the lake, looking sorrowful, soft piano music in the background. I just wanted to share this beautiful place with everyone. Karen's voice trembled, a single tear rolling down her cheek. But Ryan won't allow it. Is that what community means? The video spread quickly. Shares, comments, likes. Neighbors who once smiled at Ryan now turned away when he walked his dog Max. A 6-year-old pointed at him and shouted to his mother, Mom, that's the man who stole the lake from Miss Karen. Ryan felt like he was suffocating in his own home. Every window felt like a pair of eyes watching, judging, convicting him of a crime he hadn't committed. And Karen? She would smile when she saw him, waving as if nothing had happened. Then one afternoon, Ryan saw Karen and Brad standing by the lake, laughing, taking selfies together. Brad was on the phone, speaking loudly enough for Ryan to hear every word. This is phase 1, you understand. The lake is practically ours. Next month we'll move forward. Phase 1. Ryan understood immediately. This wasn't about a wedding party. It wasn't about a neighborhood gathering. This was a plan. A scheme prepared long before. As Ryan watched Karen and Brad with their arms around each other, laughing by the lake reflecting the golden sunset, a heavy truth sank into him. They weren't just stealing his lake. They were stealing his life. And Karen wasn't going to stop. She had the neighborhood's support. She controlled the story. And she thought she controlled Ryan. But Ryan wasn't ready to give up. Because sometimes to protect what's yours, you have to stand up and fight. And Ryan was about to find out how far Karen would go to take everything he loved. The video was barely over a minute long, yet it tore Ryan's life apart faster than any storm that had ever swept through Maplewood Heights. Karen stood by the lake, the morning breeze lightly brushing her hair, the sunrise casting a glow over her eyes, making them glisten as if she were about to cry. Her voice trembled, a bouquet in her hands, the camera shaking slightly, adding to the raw, pitiful feel of the scene. I don't want conflict. She sighed, a tear rolling down her cheek exactly as soft piano music swelled in the background. I just want to share this beautiful space with all the families in our neighborhood. But Ryan, he won't allow it. He's threatened me, shouted at me, and now he wants to steal the happiness of our entire community. Karen ended the video by turning her back, looking out over the lake, her voice barely a whisper. This isn't about me. It's about all of us. Overnight, the video spread through the community Facebook groups, neighborhood chats, TikTok and Instagram. Comments exploded in every direction. She's so brave. How could he be so selfish? Kick him out of Maplewood. Ryan couldn't react fast enough. He felt like someone was tightening a rope around his chest, each breath becoming heavier. He hadn't done anything wrong, yet the way people looked at him made him feel like a criminal who had escaped prison. Determined to defend himself, Ryan recorded his own video, clutching his property documents, his voice shaking but steady. This is my land. This lake is legally mine. I have never threatened anyone, I have never shouted at Karen. I just want to live peacefully on the property I spent my life working to buy. But Ryan's video was flagged, mass reported, and taken down within hours. 3 consecutive strikes. And Ryan's account was banned from posting in the community groups. Karen, on the other hand, continued posting new videos. She recorded children laughing by the lake, mothers walking with strollers along the shore, herself sitting on a bench with a coffee cup in hand, gazing at the water with sad eyes. We all deserve to enjoy this beauty together, don't we? Karen asked in the video, her voice cracking slightly. Comments kept flooding in. Yes, for the community.
He's so selfish.
We stand with Karen. One morning, Ryan was walking Max when Susan, a neighbor who used to bring him cookies during the holidays, passed by without saying a word, gripping her dog's leash. Eyes fixed on the ground. Ryan's throat felt dry, his steps heavy, as if his feet were sinking into cold concrete. He had become an outcast in the very community he had once trusted. Then came the flyers. On each flyer was a photo of the lake glistening under the sunset, with bold words printed below. This lake should belong to the community. Support us in reclaiming justice. The flyers appeared on bulletin boards in the supermarket, coffee shops, the library, taped to front gates around the neighborhood. Ryan tore them down, but the next day, they reappeared in double. One afternoon, laughter floated into Ryan's home. He pulled back the curtain to see Karen leading a group of neighbors, mothers, and children along the lake's edge, pointing around, describing plans for a wedding, community parties, and weekend picnics. Karen turned to him and smiled, waving across the fence with that cold, fake smile. "You're gonna share the lake with everyone, aren't you, Ryan?" Ryan didn't respond, quietly letting the curtain fall back, a wave of helplessness tightening in his chest. That evening, Karen sent an email. "From today, the lake will be managed under community authority. Any interference will result in fines and legal action." Ryan read the message over and over, his grip on his phone tightening, veins standing out on his hand. He wanted to scream, but all he could do was collapse into a chair, staring out at the lake through the window. And then, the real nightmare began. One morning, Ryan found his mailbox smashed open, THEF spray, painted in red across his fence. His garden sprinkler system had been cut, water flooding the yard and turning the lush grass into a muddy swamp. The tiles on his walkway were shifted and cracked. Every day he woke up, there was new damage to face. He called the police, who noted it down, but when they heard it was about Karen taking the lake, they sighed. "That's a civil matter, sir. You might want to find a lawyer." Ryan returned home, his eyes empty as he looked out at the lake, now surrounded by invisible hatred. But Ryan wasn't entirely alone. Linda had been watching everything. She saw Karen's fake smiles, the staged videos, the performance of the perfect victim. She saw the wary glances, heard the whispered rumors behind Ryan's back. And she knew the truth was not in those polished videos. One afternoon, as Ryan was sitting on his porch, Linda appeared, carrying a thick folder, her eyes firm and unshaken. "Ryan, we need to talk." Ryan looked up, his eyes red from sleepless nights, a glint of fragile hope surfacing. Linda sat down, opening the folder, her voice calm and clear. "Karen isn't the HOA president. She never was. She has no right to take your lake. And we're going to prove it." Ryan blinked, tears welling up as the crushing weight on his shoulders was suddenly shared by someone else. "What do we do?" he asked. Linda closed the folder, her eyes sharp with determination. "We fight back." Linda pushed a thick stack of papers toward Ryan. It was a printed copy of the HOA bylaws for Maplewood Heights. Karen was never elected as HOA president. After Mike moved away, she took advantage of that gap, started sending out fake emails pretending to be in charge. "Look at this." Linda pointed at two printed emails, one from Mike, the last one he sent before leaving, with the HOA's official logo and his signature, and another from Karen, using a personal Gmail address, without any logo, signature, or board approval. Ryan stared at the evidence, his heart pounding. All this time he thought he was fighting against a system, but the truth was, he was up against a lone fraud who knew exactly how to manipulate a crowd. Karen threatened neighbors, posted signs around your lake, sent intimidation letters, making everyone believe she had authority. Linda said, her voice calm but edged with anger. "She knows that if she controls the story, she controls the community." Linda had been quietly gathering evidence for weeks. She had dug through all HOA emails from the last 5 years, noting every irregularity, especially the 2-month silence before Karen suddenly began calling herself president. She didn't stop there. Linda had retrieved Ryan's property deed, both the physical and scanned versions, clearly showing the lake was fully within his land, with a recent certification from the county's resource office. She also printed the last valid HOA meeting minutes, which stated that electing a president required a 30-day notice, oversight by an election committee, at least 5 out of 7 board members' votes, and transparent reporting to the community. Karen did none of this, Linda emphasized. Ryan clenched his fists, a storm of anger and hope building in his chest. But that wasn't all. Linda opened her laptop, pulling up a series of photos taken with a small camera she had been using to quietly monitor Karen and Brad. "Look at this, Ryan," she said. On the screen, Karen and Brad were standing by the lake, laughing and chatting, Brad speaking loudly into a phony. "This is phase 1, understand? We'll move to the next stage next month." Linda paused the video, her gaze sharp. "Phase 1, she repeated. This wasn't random. This was a premeditated plan. Linda had tailed Brad for days, capturing images of him meeting a strange man at a downtown cafe, exchanging a thick folder labeled, Lakeside Resort Project. Brad has pulled this exact stunt in other states, using lonely women in HOA or community leadership positions, promising them romance, then using them to grab land and build resorts. Linda explained, Karen is just a pawn. Ryan listened, his chest tightening. Despite how Karen had destroyed his life, in that moment, he saw the desperation in her eyes, the reality that she was being used by Brad, turned into a tool for his greed. We're going to expose everything, Ryan, Linda said. But to do that, we need more proof. Linda had reached out to 2 remaining HOA board members, the ones who had stayed silent during Karen's staged meetings. One evening, Tom Wilson, one of those members, knocked on Ryan's door. He stood on the porch, visibly tense. I need to talk, Tom said, eyes cast downward. Linda invited him in, poured him a glass of water, and sat down across from him. Tom's hands shook as he pulled a printed email from his pocket, sent by Karini. Thanks for voting the right way, the $7,500 payment as promised. Karen bribed you? Ryan asked, unable to hide his shock. Tom nodded, eyes red. She threatened to sue me if I didn't vote in favor of taking the lake. Then she sent me money. Called it a consulting fee. Linda exhaled, a spark of resolve in her eyes. Are you willing to testify, Tom? She asked. Tom was silent for a long moment before nodding. I've been quiet for too long, he said. That night, Linda and Ryan sat at the table, laying out every document, photo, video, and email in front of them. They organized the evidence into groups: proof that Karen impersonated the HOA, proof that the lake was Ryan's legal property, video of Brad admitting to Phase 1, emails and payment records showing Karen's bribes to Tom Wilson, photos of Brad meeting with investors for the resort project. We have enough to take this to court, Linda said, her voice steady. Linda looked at Ryan, her voice calm but firm. Ryan, Brad didn't just stumble into Karen's life. He's a predator. On her laptop screen, Linda played a video she had recorded at a small Denver cafe. Brad was sitting across from a sharp-eyed man in a gray suit, a thick folder wrapped in plastic between them, clearly labeled, Lakeside Resort Project, Phase 1. Brad's voice was low but clear. Everything's going well. She trusts me completely. Next month Phase 2 begins. We'll secure full control of the lake before starting the building permits. Linda paused the video and looked into Ryan's eyes. Phase 1 was earning Karen's trust. Phase 2 is using her to steal your lake. Ryan felt like cold water had been poured over him. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling as memories flooded in. Karen's fake smiles, her friendly waves, her soft voice claiming it was all for the community. Behind every tear Karen shed on camera, Brad was there, pulling the strings. Linda showed him more photos she had captured. Brad standing beside Karen at the lake, his arm around her shoulders, kissing her forehead while looking directly at the camera with a smug, confident grin. Brad has done this in at least 3 other states, Linda said, her voice steady. He targets lonely women, usually with minor positions in HOAs, or those who can be easily manipulated. He pretends to love them, convinces them they're doing the right thing for the community, then uses them to host fake HOA meetings to seize properties. Once it's done, he disappears, leaving them to face lawsuits while he pockets the profits from the resorts. Linda's eyes were steady as she spoke. Karen is just a pawn to him, but she stepped into this willingly, craving recognition, love, and power. Ryan's fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He could see Karen's smiling face, her fake tears, the way she played the victim while turning the neighborhood against him, and behind it all, Brad's smirk, orchestrating every move. Linda placed a gentle but firm hand on Ryan's shoulder. You are not the villain here, Ryan. You're a victim just like the other neighbors. Just like Karen, even if she doesn't realize it yet. They sat in silence for a moment. The only sounds were the gentle rustle of leaves outside the window, and the soft lapping of the lake against the shore. Then Linda spoke, her eyes shining with determination. I reached out to Brad's wife. Ryan's eyes widened in shock. Linda nodded. Her name is Emily. She lives about 15 minutes from here. She had no idea Brad was faking an engagement with Karen. She didn't know about any resort project. When I showed her the photos, she cried. A shiver ran down Ryan's spine. He felt a wave of pity for Emily, for himself, and even for Karen. They were all pawns in Brad's game of greed and control. Linda pulled out a small USB drive and set it on the table. Emily sent us this. It's a recording of Brad on a call with an investor. Brad says Karen is just a tool. Once we get the lake, she's worthless to me. Ryan picked up the USB drive, gripping it as if it was the bullet that could end this nightmare once and for all. What do we have now? Ryan asked, his voice rough but his eyes clear. Linda took a slow breath. her voice strong as she listed what they had: proof that Karen impersonated the HOA, legal documents confirming Ryan's ownership of the lake, the video of Brad admitting to Phase 1, the recording of Brad calling Karen a tool, photos of Brad meeting with the investor and the resort project folder, Tom Wilson's promise to testify, Emily's agreement to support them in court. Linda's eyes shone with quiet fire. We have enough to take Brad and Karen to court, not just to protect your lake, but to expose who they really are. Ryan closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, feeling the weight that had crushed him for weeks begin to lift. When he opened his eyes, they were wet but filled with resolve. I'm ready. That night, Linda and Ryan sat at the kitchen table, spreading out every document, photo, video, and audio recording. They organized, labeled, and wrote down their arguments, preparing for the day they would stand in court before Karen, Brad, and the neighbors who had turned on Ryan. Outside, the lake reflected the moonlight, calm and silent, but Ryan knew a storm was brewing beneath the surface. This time he wouldn't run. The next morning, Ryan's phone buzzed with a message from Linda. Ryan, Tom Wilson sent in his signed testimony. Emily is ready to testify too. Ryan looked at the phone, the morning sunlight streaming through the window. A small, determined smile spread across his face. This lake wasn't just a piece of land anymore. It was a symbol of justice, and he would not let anyone take it away. The day of the trial dawned under a heavy gray sky. Ryan buttoned his crisp white shirt, clutching the stack of documents Linda had meticulously prepared. Every step he took toward the courthouse felt like a battle, with the weight pressing on his chest, but for the first time in this nightmare, he was not walking alone. Linda was beside him, carrying her sturdy old laptop, her eyes gleaming with the quiet resolve of a woman who had fought many battles and refused to lose this one. They walked past a line of neighbors filing into the courthouse, many faces from Maplewood Heights, the same people who had turned their backs on Ryan, now whispering, holding up their phones, live streaming with titles like HOA Court Showdown, Karen vs. Ryan. Inside, Karen made her entrance. Her makeup was perfect, her black dress elegant, her posture practiced. She rested her hand lightly on Brad's arm. Brad wore his expensive navy suit, that slick grin on his face, but his eyes darted around the room, calculating, cautious. Linda leaned toward Ryan and whispered, "Remember, Ryan, this isn't just about reclaiming your lake. This is about reclaiming your life." The courtroom settled as Judge Morrison, a stern woman with clear, watchful eyes, called the session to order. Karen's lawyer was the first to speak, her voice honey-sweet, weaving a tale for the jury. "Your Honor, my client Karen only wished to create a shared community space. A place for children to play, for families to gather. A gift of joy and togetherness to Maplewood Heights." Karen sat behind her, tears shimmering in her eyes, occasionally glancing around as if searching for pity in the room. Ryan clenched his fists so hard that his knuckles turned white, feeling every word like a blade slicing into him. Each carefully crafted lie another reminder of how thoroughly his life had been twisted. Then it was Linda's turn. She stepped forward calmly, opening the heavy binder she had prepared, her voice steady, unwavering. "Your Honor, here is the truth." She displayed on the screen the last official HOA email from Mike, the legitimate HOA president, with signature and seal, announcing his resignation. The 2-month silence that followed, with no official HOA communication. Karen's sudden emails from her personal Gmail, declaring herself HOA president without a board vote, without signatures, without legal authority. Linda spoke each word clearly. Karen was never elected HOA president. Every order she issued, every threat, every fine she imposed was based on a lie. A ripple of murmurs filled the courtroom. Ryan spotted Susan in the audience, the neighbor who once brought him holiday cookies but had avoided him since the drama began, now recording every moment, her hand trembling. Linda continued, playing the video of Brad in a Denver coffee shop, speaking on the phone. "She trusts me completely. Next month, Phase 2 begins. We'll secure full control of the lake before the development starts." A gasp echoed in the courtroom. Brad's face paled, and Karen's hands began to shake, clutching her skirt tightly. Linda then played the recording from Brad's call with an investor. "Karen is just a tool. Once we get the lake, she's useless." Karen's bag fell from her lap, thudding to the floor as she stared ahead, her eyes wide, tears spilling silently. Linda kept going, calling Tom Wilson to the stand. Tom walked forward, his hands shaking, voice strained. "Karen sent me an email thanking me for voting correctly, and transferred $7,500 to my account. She said it was a consulting fee, but it was a bribe to make me vote to seize Ryan's lake." Linda displayed the bank transfer receipts, Karen's email, and Tom's signed statement. The courtroom erupted in whispers. A neighbor's voice rose above the buzz. "We believed her, we supported this." Karen sat frozen, tears streaking down her makeup, while Brad's jaw clenched, his eyes cold, calculating his next move. Linda walked to the center of the courtroom, her voice firm. Karen deceived this entire community. Brad manipulated Karen for his real estate scam, and she, in turn, manipulated you. Ryan is not a villain. He is a man protecting what is legally and rightfully his. Ryan stood. His voice calm despite the storm raging in his heart. I have never threatened anyone. All I ever wanted was to live peacefully on the land I worked my whole life to afford. I don't want revenge. I want the truth. Judge Morrison nodded slowly, scanning the room before delivering her verdict. This court finds Karen guilty of impersonating an HOA official, abusing authority, spreading false information, bribing HOA board members, and inflicting emotional and financial damage upon Ryan. She is ordered to pay $3.2 million in damages, and is permanently banned from holding any HOA position. The moment the words left Judge Morrison's lips, Karen let out a shriek, turning toward Brad, screaming, "You said you'd handle this. You promised me." Brad stepped back, coldly shaking his head. "You brought this on yourself, Karen." Security moved in to restrain Karen as she sobbed, screamed, and begged, while Brad calmly walked out, phone to his ear, never looking back. Ryan stood there, tears in his eyes, his breath shaking. Linda placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "You did it, Ryan." Around them, the neighbors who had once judged him were silent, many looking at Ryan with guilt and regret. Susan stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Ryan. We were wrong." Ryan gave a weary but genuine smile. "It's enough that you know the truth now." Outside the courthouse, the cold breeze swept down the steps, carrying with it the scent of damp concrete and the clean promise of freedom. Ryan walked out into the gray light that now felt brighter, the burden on his shoulders lifting with every step. For the first time in months, Ryan felt truly free. And he knew this was not the end. Because in life justice does not come quietly. It comes when you stand up and fight for it. That lake was never just about property. It was a reminder that sometimes, to protect your peace, you have to be willing to fight. The courtroom felt suffocating, every breath heavy, every rustle of paper echoing in the tense air. The judge flipped through the final pages of the case file, glasses slipping down the bridge of her nose, sharp eyes scanning over to Karen. Karen sat there pale, makeup smeared from tears, clutching a crumpled tissue in trembling hands. Her eyes darted around, searching desperately for any sympathetic look from the neighbors who once believed her. But this time there were none. No nods of support, no murmurs of agreement. Just silent, steady eyes fixed on her. Linda tilted her head toward Ryan and nodded. Ryan stood taller, shoulders straight, eyes no longer afraid, no longer confused, only determined. He took a deep breath, letting the cool air fill his lungs, carrying the scent of sunlight and grass, the scent of freedom. His lake was still there, quietly waiting for him. Today, Ryan wasn't just fighting for a lake. He was reclaiming his right to live peacefully, to stand up against abuse of power, to protect what was his. And finally, he was winning. The judge's voice rang out, clear, each word striking the courtroom walls like a drumbeat. After reviewing all evidence, witness testimonies, and legal documents provided by the plaintiff, the court concludes, the defendant, Karen, impersonated the HOA president, spreading false information to illegally seize the lawful property of citizen Ryan. The defendant engaged in bribery, coercing HOA members to vote unlawfully, holding fraudulent meetings with the intent to take over the plaintiff's lake. The defendant and accomplice Brad conspired to execute a commercial takeover of the lake, causing significant emotional and material harm to the plaintiff. Karen let out a sob. "No, I only wanted." The judge cut her off, voice calm but cold. "Karen, your actions were not in the interest of the community. They were an abuse of community trust to fulfill your ambitions and support a scheme to steal private property." The room fell silent. You could hear the pages turning. The court rules Karen is ordered to pay damages totaling $3.2 million to the plaintiff Ryan, including material damages, emotional damages, legal fees, restoration costs, and compensation for defamation. The Karen collapsed forward, her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs that echoed through the courtroom. A cry that once drew pity, now only met with silence. The judge continued, "The defendant is permanently banned from holding any position in the HOA of Maplewood Heights, and any HOA within the state of Colorado." Karen lifted her tear-streaked face, lips trembling, eyes wide as they turned to Brad, the man who once whispered promises of building a community together. "Brad, please say something. You promised we'd do this together." Brad stood, adjusted the collar of his suit, glanced at Karen with cold, detached eyes. "Karen, we're done." Without another word, he turned and walked out, leaving Karen crumbling to the floor, her cries hollow in the dead silence that followed. The judge's gavel came down. "Court is adjourned." That sound was final, ringing like a bell marking the end of the months of hell Ryan had endured. The mornings seeing his lake invaded, the nights filled with threats and isolation, the whispers that followed him on every walk with Max. Linda turned to Ryan, placed a hand on his shoulder, and gave him a small, calm smile. "You did it, Ryan." Ryan clenched his fists, eyes glistening but refusing to let tears fall. He walked out of that courtroom, out into the warmth of the sun spilling across the pavement, taking those first steps as a man who had won a battle no one believed he could. Outside, Brad slipped into a car and sped off, disappearing in silence. Karen was escorted by court officers, her hair disabled, eyes empty, the pride that once shone in her false videos completely gone. Ryan tilted his head to the blue sky, clouds drifting lazily as sunlight bathed the street where he now stood. His lake was still there, calm, waiting free. Today Ryan didn't just win back his lake. He won back his right to live with dignity, to defend himself, to believe in justice. Because there are some things that, if you do not stand up to protect, will be taken from you forever. Ryan chose to stand, and he won. Everything at last was over. That evening Ryan hosted a small gathering by the lake. Just a few close neighbors who had stood by him. Those who realized their mistakes and chose to make it right. They strung warm golden lights along the fence, set up a few wooden tables, and the scent of grilled meat blended with the soft strum of acoustic music in the air. Linda raised her glass, her eyes glinting with quiet pride. For justice, for peace, and for this lake. Everyone clinked glasses. Laughter echoed, this time real laughter, free from fear, free from pretense. Ryan sat down, watching the lake reflect the string lights, while Max lay by his feet, eyes half closed, breathing calmly. Ryan could feel each breath within himself, steady and light. That night, for the first time in months, Ryan slept deeply, without dreams. No threatening messages, no fake emails, no wary eyes watching him as he stepped outside. The next morning, Ryan woke up, made himself a hot cup of coffee, stepped out onto his porch, and watched the sunrise over the lake. A quiet smile crossed his face, because, finally, peace had returned. If you've stayed with this story until the end, I know you're not just here for entertainment. You're here because you believe in justice, in the power of standing up for yourself, and in the right to protect what you've worked so hard to build. Ryan's story isn't just about a lake. It's about fighting back against manipulation, lies, and intimidation. It's about the courage to face an entire community that turned against you, to stand your ground, and to reclaim your peace. If you believe justice matters, and if you believe stories like this need to reach others who might feel powerless or alone, hit that like button now so YouTube knows this message needs to be shared. Comment below, have you ever felt like Ryan? Fighting for what's yours while others tried to tear you down. Your story could inspire someone else who is on the edge of giving up. And if you want to keep following true stories that expose power abuse, and inspire others to fight back, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next story. Because justice doesn't start in the courtroom. It starts with you.